Good morning, and welcome to the Financial Optimist. And today I'm asking the question, do you have to start a business if you want to become successful, or can you become successful by working a normal 9 to 5? Let's dive right into it. So if you watch YouTube videos about personal finance, typically you come across a lot of advice centering around the idea of starting a business, becoming an entrepreneur, and focusing on making more money than everyone else, and that being the path to prosperity. And while that certainly can work for many people, you look here, it says just about 15% of people in the US actually do own a business. So for the 85% of people that never start a business, this path just won't work for them. There's many people out there who love watching YouTube videos about successful men, about finance, about investments, but they never really do any of it. They work just a normal 9 to 5 job, live a very ordinary life, and they still want to be successful, but they don't want to take some of the risks that goes along with starting a business. So if you are someone working a normal job, about how much can you expect to make? Well, here we have the numbers for the US. So if you're watching from another country, the numbers for you will be different. But for the American audience here, we have the 16 to 19-year-old age bracket. So basically, fresh out of high school, you can make $33,000 a year. So if you're getting minimum wage or a little bit above it, you could make that kind of money. Once you get to be 20 to 24, we're talking about $41,000 per year, so a little bit more. And once you get to 25 to 34, now we're talking $58,000. A pretty substantial jump there. So that's some pretty good money, because usually as you get older, you get more experience, you make more money. And so the 24 to 25 age gap here is where we start to see some big increases in wages. Then you go to 35 to 44, we're talking $69,000, almost $70,000, another big jump there. But then when we get to the next age bracket, 45 to 54, we'll notice it peaks off at about $71,000, $72,000, so not much more than the 35 to 44-year-olds. And after that, the wages start to go down. So looks like throughout our career, up until about age 50 or so, wages go up. Then after 50, wages start to go down. Probably there's people who are going into partial retirement, getting a part-time job instead of full-time because they don't need as much money by that age, that sort of thing. And so when we look at these numbers, these here are the median wages, meaning half of all Americans earn less than this, half of all Americans earn more than this. So with that in mind, most people will never make more than $100,000 a year. Even if you have one good year with a lot of overtime, maybe you make $100,000 one year, most Americans never will. And most Americans will never start a business. Most Americans never make a six-figure salary. So with this reality in mind, how do you become successful? Well, that's easy. The way to do that isn't by making more money than everyone else. It's by spending less. And so we look at the average cost of living. Here we have the search assistant telling us around $56,000 per year is what the average American spends as an individual. So that means if you're in your 20s and you're making $40,000 a year, but the cost of living is $56,000 a year, now you see why so many young people can't afford to move out of their parents' house, because the average expenses is higher than the average wages for that age range. And then when you look at in men in their 30s making a little more, now we're talking, okay, you can afford to move out of your parents' house at this age, maybe start a family of your own if you're someone that wants to do that. But keep in mind that these types of wages are the national wages. So you have places like California, New York with a very high cost of living and higher than average wages. Other places like Alabama, Mississippi, where the wages are much lower and the cost of living is also lower. So where you live does make a big difference. But I say in my own personal life, about 80% of the people I see on a regular basis are between the ages of like 20 and 35. That's the age range of my friends, the age range of my coworkers, the age range of my family. That's the age range I typically spend most time with. We're talking, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, very common salary ranges I see for people of that age. And so when it comes to younger people making that kind of money, it's tough to get by in today's world. And that's why I practice what's called the low bills lifestyle. I have very, very few bills. If you watched my breakdown video for the month of July, I showed you how I spent less than $500 for the entire month. So when you look at this here, and you look at the breakdown by category, I did a very similar breakdown for my monthly bills, and I spent considerably less. So like I said, if I'm earning, some good money, something like this, maybe a little more, and if I'm only spending a few $100s a month, I can be putting thousands per month into savings. I put more than 80% of my paycheck into savings every month, and that means I can save tens of thousands of dollars per year. Now, I've been doing this for several years, and that was how I was able to pay cash for this house behind me. So now that I completely own a house free and clear with no mortgage, I'm able to live very, very cheaply. So you look at this expense here, the single biggest line item is the housing. Whether it's rent or mortgage, it's easily a couple $1,000s a month. And because I decided to purchase a house for cash instead of getting a mortgage, and I decided to spend several years saving up for it first, I was able to knock out this category. It's down to zero. Transportation, I don't have a car note. I paid cash for my car, just like for my house. I pay cash for everything. It's how I roll. And so I don't have anything for this this budget. For food, $600 a month for individual, that sounds rather high. That's more like a family of 2 or 3 at that point. So I wonder if the search assistant is accurate in that regard, because it sounds a bit high. I spent less than $100 on food last month. This month it'll probably be more like 100, 150 this month. We'll wait and see what it is. But food, like I said, can be expensive, can be affordable depending where you go. Healthcare, I spend about $100 a month for health insurance. I do have employer-sponsored health insurance, and so for me it's a lot less than this. Utilities, I paid about $240 for utilities last month, so I'm below average there. And then like things like miscellaneous, that can be anything really. And so basically, it's like because I've chosen to live a certain lifestyle where everything is affordable, and I've chosen to cut out things I don't need and only buy the things I do need and live a very simple life, I can keep my bills very, very low. And so because I put more than 80% of my paycheck into savings, and I'm earning, less than $100,000 a year, I'm on track to retire in my 40s because I'm putting so much money into savings all the time. And so people tell you, if a young man can't get ahead in life, he can't buy a house, you got to make a lot of money. No, I make less than $100,000 a year. I already own a house free and clear. And so it is possible to get ahead in life. You just have to have a different strategy. So if you want someone that's, is part of the 85% that doesn't want to start a business, that's fine. I'm not going to pressure you to starting a business. But keep in mind, this is the realistic salary range you could earn. So with that in mind, if you too want to embrace the low bills lifestyle, then please watch the rest of my videos. I have all kinds of the videos talking about how you can save money, how you can make life affordable. And that's what I talk about doing here at The Financial Optimist, because I'm optimistic about my future, because I know I'm already doing very well, and I want you to do well as well. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.